Marcus was a poorly dressed man. His worn and dirty clothes concealed a calm demeanor and attentive gaze. At the door of a busy bank branch, he opened the door gently for a woman to enter. Rachel, an elegant and hurried executive, barely noticed the gesture. With a look of disdain, she murmured something offensive as she passed by. Marcus remained silent, observing her as her heels echoed in the lobby. Days later, Rachel, tired after a long day of work, saw a luxury car stop in front of the bank branch. She couldn't believe her eyes when Marcus, now in an impeccable suit, got out of the vehicle and was greeted with respect. Who was this man she had scorned? Rachel Martin was a 35-year-old financial executive known for her efficiency and determination. Her routine began early and ended late, always filled with meetings, deadlines, and decisions shaping the future of significant investments. That morning, Rachel was particularly irritated. The pressure to close a big deal consumed her thoughts, and the last thing she needed was any kind of distraction. As she left the luxurious building where she lived, she almost tripped over a poorly dressed man selling newspapers on the sidewalk. Muttering a hasty apology, Rachel got into her car and headed to the bank. The traffic was chaotic as always, and her patience, already scarce, quickly wore thin. Upon arriving at the bank, Rachel got out of the car with quick, determined steps. She wore an elegant dress and high-heeled shoes that echoed in the parking lot. Approaching the branch door, she saw a man standing there, dressed in old and worn clothes. He seemed out of place, but before she could think more about it, he held the door open for her. "Good morning," the man said with a kind smile. Rachel didn't even look at him, muttering something incomprehensible that might have been a thank you or a disguised offense. Her thoughts were fixed on the meeting she had in a few minutes. She walked past him as if he were invisible, not giving importance to the gesture. Marcus Peterson watched her enter the bank without responding to his greeting. He was accustomed to such reactions. Dressed simply, almost miserably, he knew that most people saw him only as a beggar or someone of no importance. But Marcus had his reasons for being there, reasons that went far beyond what his clothes suggested. He entered the branch just after Rachel, his eyes calmly studying the environment. The interior was luxurious, with shiny marble and uniformed employees moving quickly. Marcus knew this world well, though no one there knew it. Rachel, for her part, was immersed in a heated discussion about a merger that could bring millions to the bank. Her voice was firm, her gaze penetrating. She didn't notice when Marcus passed by her towards a discreet corner of the branch. "I need these numbers to be perfect," Rachel said to her assistant, a young, anxious man named Matt. "We can't afford any mistakes now." Matt nodded vigorously, taking frantic notes. He knew Rachel's demands were proportional to her competence. She was tough but fair, and he admired her for that. While Rachel and Matt continued discussing details, Marcus found an old friend, Mark, the branch manager. They hugged and exchanged a few words. Mark knew who Marcus really was and always treated him with great respect. "How are you, Marcus?" Mark asked, his voice low to avoid attracting attention. "Good, Mark. Just observing things," Marcus replied with an enigmatic smile. The interaction between the two men did not go unnoticed by Rachel. She glanced sideways, trying to understand what a man like Marcus could want with someone like Mark, but her curiosity was quickly extinguished by the demands of her meeting. The day passed quickly, and Rachel, exhausted, left the bank without looking back at Marcus. He, for his part, remained at the bank a while longer, conversing with Mark about matters that no one there could imagine. As he left, Marcus looked at the sky and took a deep breath. He knew his plan was in motion and that eventually, people like Rachel would understand that a person's value is not in their clothes or appearance. He had much to teach, and the lesson was just beginning. Marcus walked slowly through the busy city streets, his worn clothes contrasting with the rush and shine around him. He was a 40-year-old man with graying hair and a face marked by life. Despite his appearance, his eyes conveyed a serenity that few could decipher. Marcus knew most people underestimated him, but he didn't mind. There was much more to him than what met the eye. He walked to a cafe on the corner of the main street. The owner, a kind man named Sam, smiled as he saw Marcus enter. "Good morning, Marcus." "The usual?" Sam asked, already grabbing a cup to serve coffee. "Good morning, Sam." "Yes, the usual, please," Marcus replied, sitting at a table near the window. While he waited, Marcus observed the city's movement. People running, cars honking, the constant sound of a city that never sleeps. He liked to watch people, trying to understand their stories just by the small details of their routines. It was a habit he acquired after losing everything he had. Marcus had been a successful entrepreneur. He had a great fortune, luxurious houses, expensive cars, but a risky investment led him to ruin. Decided to understand the true value of life, he opted to live simply, almost invisibly. He wanted to experience the world without the barriers money created. While drinking his coffee, Marcus thought about the woman he had encountered at the bank. Rachel was a determined executive, clearly overwhelmed by work. Her disdain for him had been evident, but Marcus held no grudges. He knew appearances could be deceiving. At that moment, Marcus's phone rang. It was Mark, the bank manager. "Hello, Mark," Marcus answered with a smile. "Marcus, we need to meet." "I have something important to discuss with you," Mark said, his voice serious. "Sure, where and when?" Marcus asked, curious. "This afternoon at the cafe on the corner of the branch. Does that work?" Mark suggested. "I'll be there," Marcus replied, ending the call. The day passed slowly, as it often did for Marcus. He took advantage of every moment without the rush that once consumed him. In the afternoon, he headed to the cafe where he had arranged to meet Mark. He sat at the same table near the window, watching the movement outside while he waited. Shortly after, Mark entered with a worried expression. He sat down across from Marcus and ordered a coffee. "What's going on, Mark?" Marcus asked directly. "It's about Rachel," Mark began, taking a deep breath. "She's involved in a risky transaction. The bank could gain a lot, but it could also lose everything. She's under a lot of pressure, and it's consuming her." Marcus listened attentively, recalling Rachel's tense expression at the bank. "And where do I come into this?" Marcus asked, intrigued. "I know you, Marcus. I know you've been through situations like this. Maybe you can help in some way." "She needs to understand that not everything boils down to money and power," Mark explained. Marcus thought for a moment. He knew he could offer a different perspective, but he wasn't sure if Rachel would be willing to listen. "I'll think of something, Mark. Thanks for telling me," Marcus finally said. Mark nodded, relieved. They continued talking about other topics, but the concern for Rachel remained in Marcus's mind. Later that day, Marcus decided to go to the bank again. He wanted to observe Rachel, to try to understand more about her. He entered the branch and, as expected, saw her involved in a heated discussion with a client. "We need these documents signed immediately," Rachel exclaimed, her voice firm and impatient. The client, a middle-aged man, seemed nervous and hesitant. Marcus discreetly approached, listening to the conversation. "I understand, Ms. Martin, but I need more time to review everything," the man said, trying to stay calm. Rachel sighed, visibly frustrated. "We don't have more time. If we don't close this today, we'll miss the opportunity," she insisted. Marcus observed the scene, feeling the tension in the air. He waited until the client walked away, then approached Rachel. "Rachel, can I talk to you for a moment?" he asked calmly. She looked at him, surprised and a bit irritated. "Marcus, right? What do you want?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Just a moment of your time. I want to share something that might help," Marcus replied with a calm smile. Rachel hesitated, but something in Marcus's calm demeanor made her agree. "All right, but be quick," she said, leading him to an empty meeting room. Marcus sat at the table, observing Rachel as she settled on the other side. "I know you're under a lot of pressure, Rachel. I was in that position once and learned the hard way that sometimes we need to stop and see things from a different perspective," he began. Rachel listened, initially skeptical, but Marcus's sincerity made her pay attention. "What do you suggest I do?" she finally asked. "Breathe. Reevaluate your priorities. Not everything is about closing the most lucrative deal. Sometimes it's about doing the right thing and taking care of the people around you," Marcus advised. Rachel was silent for a moment, reflecting on his words. "Do you really believe in that, Marcus?" she asked, with a hint of curiosity. "Yes, I do. And I believe that if you allow it, we can work on this together," he replied with an encouraging smile. Rachel wasn't sure what to expect, but something inside her said that maybe, just maybe, Marcus was right. And so, a new alliance began to form, based on understanding and mutual respect. Rachel left the meeting room with Marcus, still pondering his words. He was an intriguing man, someone who seemed to see the world in a way she had long forgotten. She went to her desk, trying to focus on her work, but the conversation with Marcus kept resonating in her mind. That afternoon, Rachel had another important meeting with the bank's board of directors about the merger she was trying to close. It was a deal that could bring millions to the bank, but also posed significant risks. She knew she needed to be at her best, but the tension of the past few days was consuming her. At the start of the meeting, Rachel presented the numbers and projections, speaking with confidence and clarity. The board listened attentively, asking questions and discussing details. But despite her impeccable presentation, Rachel felt increasingly anxious. After the meeting, she returned to her desk and found a note from Marcus. "Rachel, if you need someone to talk to, or just to listen, I'll be at the cafe." Marcus. She pondered the note for a moment and decided she needed a break. She went to the cafe where she knew Marcus would be. When she entered, she saw him sitting at the same table near the window, with a coffee in hand and a book open in front of him. "Rachel," Marcus greeted as she sat down across from him. "I'm glad you came. The meeting was exhausting as always, but your offer to listen seemed tempting," she said with a slight smile. "So here I am. Tell me what's on your mind," Marcus encouraged, his eyes attentive and kind. Rachel took a deep breath, thinking of where to start. "I've been trying to close this merger for weeks. The numbers are promising, but the risks are enormous. If something goes wrong, the bank could lose a lot of money, and I could lose my job. The pressure is overwhelming," she confessed, her words coming out fast and nervous. Marcus listened to every word. "I understand the pressure. I've been in a similar position. What you need to remember is that not everything boils down to the numbers. There are people involved, lives that will be affected. Sometimes, we need to take a step back and evaluate the human impact of our decisions," he said calmly. Rachel was silent, reflecting on what Marcus had said. She had always been a practical person focused on results, but he was right. There was more at stake than just money. "And how do you deal with that?" she finally asked. "I learned to prioritize what truly matters, and sometimes that means making difficult but right decisions. It also means asking for help when needed and trusting the people around you," Marcus replied. Rachel nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "I've never been good at asking for help. I always thought I needed to handle everything alone," she admitted. "There's no shame in asking for help, Rachel. In fact, it shows strength and wisdom. We're all human, and sometimes we need each other," Marcus said, smiling. Rachel felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The conversation with Marcus was beginning to change her perspective. "Thank you, Marcus. I think I needed to hear that," she said sincerely. "Whenever you need, I'll be around," he replied with a warm smile. The following days were different for Rachel. She began to allow herself to breathe, delegate more tasks, and ask for help when needed. Her relationship with Marcus also grew stronger. They met regularly at the cafe, discussing not only work but also life in general. Marcus became a mentor and friend, someone she could trust. One morning while they were at the cafe, Marcus received a call from Mark. His expression changed from calm to concerned. "Understood. I'll be there soon," Marcus said, ending the call. "What's going on?" Rachel asked, noticing the change in his expression. "Mark needs me at the bank. It seems something urgent has come up," Marcus explained. Standing up, Rachel decided to accompany him. When they arrived at the bank, there was unusual commotion. Employees were running back and forth, and Mark stood at the center of it all, with a serious expression. "Marcus, Rachel, thank goodness you're here. We're facing a crisis. One of our major investors is withdrawing support, and that could jeopardize the entire merger," Mark explained quickly. Rachel felt panic rising, but Marcus put a firm hand on her shoulder. "We'll solve this together," he said, looking into her eyes. With Marcus's help, Rachel managed to stay calm and think clearly. They met with the investor, discussed concerns, and found a solution that benefited all parties involved. It was a decisive moment for Rachel, seeing how Marcus's people-centered approach could be powerful. When the crisis was resolved, Rachel and Marcus left the bank together, exhausted but relieved. "You were right, Marcus. Sometimes it's necessary to look beyond the numbers," Rachel said, smiling. "And you did an excellent job, Rachel. I'm proud of you," Marcus replied with a smile. That day, Rachel learned more than she had in years of experience at the bank. Her friendship with Marcus continued to grow, showing her a new path where empathy and wisdom went hand in hand. The days passed, and Rachel felt more balanced and confident in her decisions. Her relationship with Marcus had helped her see work from a new perspective, but she still had many questions about him. How could a man with so much wisdom and experience live so simply? What had led him to choose that path? One morning, while having coffee, Rachel decided it was time to know more about Marcus's story. He had always been discreet about his past, but she felt the need to understand better the man who had become her mentor and friend. "Marcus, you've always been very open with me about what I need to do to improve, but you've never talked much about yourself. Why did you decide to live this way?" Rachel asked, trying to be delicate. Marcus smiled, his gaze distant for a moment. "It's a long story, Rachel, but I think it's time you know a bit more about me," he replied, leaning forward as if about to share a secret. Rachel listened attentively as Marcus began to tell his story. "A few years ago, I was a successful entrepreneur. I had a large technology company, a mansion, luxury cars, everything money could buy. But I was unhappy. My life was a constant race for more and more success, and I lost sight of what really mattered," he began, his voice calm and reflective. Rachel nodded, encouraging him to continue. "I made a risky investment, thinking it would be the next big step, but it didn't go well. I lost everything in a matter of months. My company went bankrupt, I lost my house, my status. It was a devastating blow." Marcus recalled the difficult moment. Rachel watched Marcus closely, admiring his honesty. "And that's when I decided I needed to understand the real value of things. I started living simply, without luxuries, to discover what truly mattered in life. And over time, I realized that what I had lost was nothing compared to what I gained," Marcus explained, smiling serenely. "What did you gain, Marcus?" Rachel asked, curious. "Peace of mind, wisdom, and the ability to see beyond appearances. I learned to value people for who they are, not for what they have. And that has brought me more satisfaction than any success," he replied with conviction. Rachel was silent for a moment, absorbing everything Marcus had shared. "It's an incredible story, Marcus, and it makes me admire you even more," she said sincerely. Marcus smiled, grateful. "And you, Rachel, what do you value most in your life?" he asked, turning the question around. Rachel thought for a moment. Her life had always been centered around her career and professional success, but now she was beginning to realize that there were more important things. "I think I'm discovering that now. I always thought professional success was everything, but now I see that relationships, inner peace, and wisdom are equally important." "You've helped me see that, Marcus," she replied with a smile. Marcus nodded, satisfied. "I'm glad to hear that. And remember, we're all constantly learning. It's never too late to change and grow," he said. That afternoon, Rachel returned to the bank with new energy. She met with her team, and this time she paid more attention to their needs and concerns. She began to create a more collaborative and empathetic work environment, something she learned from Marcus. One night, while reviewing documents at home, Rachel received a call from Mark. "Rachel, I need you to come to the bank early tomorrow morning. There's something you need to see," he said without giving many details. Curious and a little worried, Rachel agreed. The next day, she arrived at the bank before opening hours. Mark met her at the entrance, his expression serious but optimistic. "What's going on, Mark?" she asked as she followed him to a meeting room. "It's about Marcus. I think you need to know more about him," Mark said, opening the door. Inside the room, Rachel saw a table full of documents and photos. Mark began to explain. "Marcus was one of our biggest investors in the past. When he lost everything, many of us here at the bank were shocked. But the most incredible thing was how he dealt with it. Instead of despairing, he decided to learn and grow from the experience. Since then, he's helped many people, including me, understand the true value of life," Mark said, looking at the documents. Rachel was impressed. She knew Marcus was special, but she had no idea about the depth of his story. "And why are you telling me this now, Mark?" she asked, trying to understand the reason. "Because I think you deserve to know who you're dealing with. Marcus has been a great influence on many here at the bank, and, from what I can see, he has been for you too," Mark explained. Rachel nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude and respect for Marcus growing within her. "Thank you for sharing this, Mark. It really means a lot to me," she said sincerely. Later that same day, Rachel found Marcus at the cafe, as usual. "Marcus, I had an interesting conversation with Mark today. He told me more about you, about what happened in the past," Rachel began. Looking directly at him, Marcus smiled, unsurprised. "I figured he would someday. And how do you feel knowing more about my story?" he asked, curious. "I feel even more respect for you, Marcus, and I'm grateful for everything you've taught me. Your story is an inspiration," she replied with emotion in her voice. Marcus was silent for a moment, appreciating Rachel's words. "Thank you, Rachel. And you know I'm equally grateful to have found someone like you, willing to learn and grow. We're all on this journey together," he said with a smile. At that moment, Rachel realized her life would never be the same, and that was a good thing. With Marcus's help, she was becoming a more complete person, someone who valued not just professional success, but also wisdom, empathy, and human relationships. She was eager to see where this new perspective would take her. The weeks passed, and Rachel continued to meet regularly with Marcus at the cafe. She was transforming not only as a professional, but also as a person. Her decisions at the bank began to reflect a more balanced and empathetic approach, and her team noticed the change. The work environment became more collaborative and less tense, something everyone appreciated. One afternoon, while they were at the cafe, Marcus seemed more thoughtful than usual. Rachel noticed his serious expression and decided to ask. "Marcus, is something bothering you?" she asked with concern in her voice. Marcus looked at her, hesitating for a moment before answering. "Actually, yes. There's something I need to resolve and can't keep postponing. It's a part of my past that still needs closure," he said calmly. Rachel leaned forward, interested. "What is it, Marcus? Maybe I can help," she offered. Marcus sighed, as if feeling relieved to finally share his thoughts. "Do you remember the investment that led to my ruin? It was a partnership with a man named Richard Thompson. He was my friend, but in the final moments, I realized he had different intentions. When things started to go wrong, he disappeared, leaving me with all the consequences. I haven't heard from him since," Marcus explained. Rachel listened attentively, feeling the pain and frustration in Marcus's words. "And what do you want to do now?" she asked gently. "I need to confront him, understand why he did what he did, and maybe find a way to move on completely," Marcus replied with a determined look. Rachel understood the importance of what Marcus was about to do. "I'm here to support you, Marcus. What do you need?" she offered. Marcus smiled, grateful for her friendship. "Thank you, Rachel. I'll need help finding him. He was always a difficult man to track, but I have some leads. Maybe we can start there," he said. In the following days, Rachel used her contacts at the bank to help Marcus find information about Richard Thompson. They discovered he was living in a nearby city, working at a small consulting firm. Marcus decided it was time to confront him and asked Rachel to accompany him. On the scheduled day, they took Rachel's car and drove to the neighboring city. The drive was quiet, but both were anxious about what was to come. They arrived at Richard's office, a modest building on a quiet street. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked before entering. Rachel nodded, feeling Marcus's determination. They entered the office and asked to speak with Richard. After a few minutes of waiting, they were led to a meeting room. Richard, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a calculating look, was sitting at the table. When he saw Marcus, his expression changed from surprise to discomfort. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" Richard asked, trying to maintain composure. "We need to talk, Richard, about what happened years ago," Marcus said, his voice firm. Rachel watched as Marcus approached Richard, sitting at the table across from him. "I don't know if there's much to say, Marcus. Things went wrong. It was a risk we both accepted," Richard replied evasively. "It's not that simple, Richard. You knew the risks but left me alone when everything fell apart. I lost everything while you disappeared without a trace," Marcus said, his voice filled with emotion. Richard sighed, finally admitting the truth. I was scared, Marcus. When I realized there was no way out, I ran. It was selfish, I know, but I was desperate, he confessed. Marcus was silent for a moment, absorbing Richard's words. You left me to deal with everything alone, Richard. It wasn't just about the money. It was about friendship, trust, Marcus said, his voice calmer but still firm. Richard lowered his head, ashamed. I know I can't change the past, Marcus, but if there's anything I can do to make it right, I'm willing to try, he said sincerely. Marcus looked at Richard, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. What I want, Richard, is a sincere apology and an honest explanation. After that, maybe we can find a way to move forward, Marcus finally said. Richard nodded, his eyes showing remorse. I'm truly sorry, Marcus. I let fear and greed take over. I hope you can forgive me someday, he said sincerely. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling a weight lifted from his shoulders. I hope so too, Richard. Thank you for being honest, he replied. With the conversation over, Marcus and Rachel left Richard's office. On the way back, Marcus seemed lighter, as if he had finally found a way to let go of the past. How do you feel, Marcus? Rachel asked as they drove. Relieved. I think it's what I needed, a closure, an explanation, a way to close this chapter of my life, he said, smiling. Rachel smiled back, happy for her friend. I'm proud of you, Marcus. It took a lot of courage to do this, she said sincerely. Marcus was grateful for Rachel's support. I couldn't have done it without you, Rachel. Thank you for being by my side, he said. As they continued the drive back, both knew that experience had brought them closer. Marcus was finally at peace with his past, and Rachel continued learning and growing with Marcus's wisdom. Their journey together was far from over, but together they were ready to face any challenge that came their way. With the confrontation with Richard resolved, Marcus felt lighter and ready to focus on his present and future. Rachel was also in a moment of transformation, using the lessons learned from Marcus to become a more compassionate and balanced leader. Both were ready for new challenges and opportunities. A few weeks after the confrontation, Rachel received unexpected news at the bank. A high-level management position had become available, and the board of directors wanted her to take the role. It was a great opportunity, but also meant more responsibility and pressure. She was excited, but also a bit apprehensive. That afternoon, Rachel found Marcus at the cafe, eager to share the news. Marcus, I have incredible news. The board wants me to take on a leadership position at the bank. It's a great opportunity, but also a big challenge, she said, her voice full of excitement and a touch of nervousness. Marcus smiled, happy for her. Congratulations, Rachel. That's incredible. You deserve it, he replied sincerely. Thank you, Marcus. But I'm also a bit nervous. It's a big responsibility, and I don't want to disappoint anyone, she admitted, her voice showing some insecurity. Marcus placed a reassuring hand over hers. Rachel, you're more than ready for this. You've learned so much in the past months and have become an exceptional leader. Trust yourself and your abilities. And remember, you're not alone. You can always count on me and your team, he said encouragingly. Rachel smiled, feeling more confident. Thank you, Marcus. Your words mean a lot to me, she replied. In the following days, Rachel began preparing for her new position. She reviewed ongoing projects, met with her team, and set new goals. Her leadership style, now more collaborative and empathetic, started to make a significant difference at the bank. One morning, while Rachel was reviewing reports, she received an urgent message from Mark, the branch manager. Rachel, we need you to come to the meeting room. It's about the merger we've been working on, the message read. Rachel quickly went to the meeting room, where she found Mark and other team members. What's happening, Mark? She asked, concerned. We had a problem with one of the main investors. He's hesitating to continue with the merger, and that could jeopardize the entire deal, Mark explained. Rachel took a deep breath, feeling the pressure of the situation but remembering Marcus's words and keeping calm. It's okay. We'll solve it together. Who's the investor? She asked, already thinking of a solution. Mark gave her the investor's name and contact information, a businessman named David Anderson. Rachel decided she needed to speak with him personally. At the end of the day, Rachel drove to David's office. Upon arrival, she was greeted by his assistant and led to a meeting room. "Mr. Anderson, thank you for seeing me on such short notice. I'd like to discuss the merger and your concerns," Rachel began, her voice firm and respectful. David Anderson, an experienced businessman, looked at her with interest. "Of course, Ms. Martin. I'm a bit concerned about some aspects of the merger. We need to ensure this will be beneficial for everyone involved," he said directly. Rachel nodded, understanding his concerns. "I understand completely, Mr. Anderson. Let me explain how we're addressing those points and how we intend to ensure the safety and success of the merger," she responded, beginning to detail the plans and measures they were implementing. The conversation was long but productive. Rachel managed to answer all of David's questions and show that they were taking all necessary precautions. In the end, David seemed more reassured. "Very well, Ms. Martin. I appreciate your transparency and dedication. I think we can move forward with the merger," he said, extending his hand. Rachel smiled, relieved. "Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I'm confident this merger will be a success for all of us," she replied, shaking his hand. Back at the bank, Rachel shared the good news with her team. Everyone celebrated the achievement, feeling more united and motivated. Rachel knew the merger was just the beginning of many challenges, but also many opportunities. That night, Rachel met Marcus at the cafe to share the victory. "Marcus, we did it. The merger is going to happen. I convinced the investor to stay," she said, her voice full of joy. Marcus smiled proudly. "I knew you would, Rachel. You've become an incredible leader," he said sincerely. Rachel felt moved by his words. "I couldn't have done it without you, Marcus. Everything I've learned from you has helped me get here. Thank you for being my mentor and friend," she said with gratitude. Marcus nodded, happy to see Rachel's growth. "It's been an honor, Rachel, and you know I'll always be here for you. Whatever you need," he replied. The following months were marked by new challenges and achievements. The merger was a success, bringing great benefits to the bank. Rachel continued leading with wisdom and empathy, earning the respect and admiration of everyone around her. Marcus, for his part, continued living his simple but purposeful life, helping and inspiring those around him. One day, while they were walking together through the city, Marcus stopped and looked at Rachel. "Rachel, you've done an amazing job. I'm very proud of you," he said. Rachel smiled, feeling truly happy. "Thank you, Marcus. And I'm grateful for everything you've done for me. Our friendship is one of the best things that has happened to me," she replied. Marcus nodded, knowing their journey together had been special and transformative. "And so it continues, Rachel. There's always more to learn, more to grow, and we're just getting started," he said with a smile. Rachel agreed, feeling inspired and ready for whatever came next. Together, they would continue facing challenges, growing, and making a difference in the lives of those around them. The journey of Rachel and Marcus was a powerful reminder that regardless of adversity, true wealth lies in human connections and the lessons we learn along the way.